What's up, guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1996 Chevy Beretta Z26. Up front is a 3.1 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this here Chevy Beretta for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm on a little bit of a GM hot streak. I recently reviewed a Cadillac Cimarron, and now I'm in a Beretta, two very iconic GM cars from the late 80s and early 90s. I'm also excited because I haven't done a Beretta before, and this is the Z26 with the FE3 suspension package. So we'll be talking a lot about that a little bit later on. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, zackpradel.com, where you can check out stickers like this retro sticker pack, would fit very well with this Beretta, or a big friggin' bottle test sticker, both with free shipping. You could also submit your own vehicle to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you could read my behind the scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's get back to that 3.1 liter V6. Well, this engine is the 3100 from GM. They used this for quite some time, all the way up into the 2000s with like the Buick Century, but this was really derived from the 2.8 liter from the 1980s, again from that Cimarron that I drove that had the 2.8. Well, GM took it, bored it out, and made it the 3100. These are reliable engines. These are fantastic engines. They don't make too much power. Now, this Beretta only makes 155 horsepower, and the reason I say only is because before 1995, the Beretta made 160. Because emission regulations changed, the Beretta actually got a 5 horsepower decrease for 95 and 96, its final 2 model years. This car wasn't really meant to be a speed demon. Now, there was a V8 concept car of the Beretta, known as the Ferretta. However, it obviously didn't come to fruition. Like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed automatic transmission. It's a GM automatic from the 1990s. I don't know what you really expect out of it. It's nothing crazy. However, it is still working 26 years later, and that's all I can ask from it. Last but not least, of course, the Beretta is front-wheel drive. Now, I do want to talk about the FE3 suspension package, because there's the FE1, FE2, and FE3. Now, the Z26 got the FE2 from the factory, but then you could even upgrade it further to the FE3. So what does the FE3 mean? Well, it's just a thicker sway bar in the back and stiffer springs that also make the Beretta sit a little bit lower. That's it. That's what the FE3 package is. A little bit more of a sporty feel to the Beretta, but nothing out of this world. With that out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a bunch of very plain gauges. On the left is my coolant temperature, oil pressure, and tachometer. And on the right is my speedometer, battery voltage, and fuel. Everything I want to know or would need to know about my Beretta, I can find right here. The steering wheel is large and puffy from the 90s, of course. There's nothing too crazy to write home about. I do have horn buttons, and that's it. Now, off to the left and right of the gauges, we have some interesting buttons. On the left, these are my headlight switches, and they're very, very 80s. They're this chunky plastic, sure, but also you sort of twist it, and there's a window that shows you when the headlights are on, off, things like that. Really, really strange. And then off to the right of the gauges, I have my wiper controls, again, run off the same sort of turn dial knob system that the headlights use. Very, very interesting. Off to the left below those headlight switches, I do have a climate control vent. And on the door, I just have my power locks and handle to get in and out. I do have manual mirrors up top as well. Moving into the center, I have 2 climate control vents that say Beretta on them. Moving across to the right of those vents, however, I have more vents on the dash. That's nothing crazy. However, they do have pop-out cup holders. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Beretta, and of course, it fails. I don't think any pop-out cup holders have ever passed the big friggin' bottle test. And then down below, we have the factory radio for the Beretta, which is really, really nice. It has the Dolby noise reduction, that DNR logo, as well as a cassette player. I love the look of this. This is just so period correct. And down below the radio, of course, we do have our climate controls, our fan speed, where to send it, and temperature. Moving down onto the center console, I do have a little button to release the trunk, as well as I have the shifter. The shifter knob is actually out of a different GM product. This is not the stock knob. However, the shifter location is factory, and it has a nice clunk in the gear. I really, really do like that about it, but nothing out of the ordinary. Moving down to the center console, what is out of the ordinary is this cup holder slash ashtray combination. Depending on what lever you pull, you either get an ashtray or a tiny microscopic cup holder, but as we know, the Beretta already fails the big friggin' bottle test. Then I get my power windows down here. Very odd location for the Beretta, or for any car, to have the power windows in the center. A very European thing. We'll be talking a little bit more about a little country in Europe towards the end of the video. But then we get a center console and the seats. The seats are incredibly comfortable. GM knew what they were doing in two categories back in the 1990s. Seat comfort and heaters. Man, a GM heater cannot be beat. But these seats are really, really comfortable, even for me, a pretty big guy. They do have higher, sportier bolsters for the Z26, and I still fit in them comfortably. But speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1996 Chevy Beretta Z26, and honestly, the back seats feel really nice. That's one thing. GM also nails the back seats, but honestly, spaciously, it's not that bad. I do have to move my knees a little bit, but for it being a coupe, these are fantastic back seats. For it being a coupe, I have to keep saying that because I don't like getting in and out of coupes. I don't think anyone in the world likes getting in and out of coupes, but once you're back here, it's not the worst thing in the world, like a lot of other vehicles sort of punish you. Let's take a quick look at the trunk, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, so we're on the back of the Chevy Beretta. A couple of things to note. First of all, this is still the era, 1996, where there's two different keys for each GM car. The Oldsmobile Calais was like this, the Cimarron was like this, and so the circle key is for the trunk, and the square key is for the ignition. But once we are in the trunk, pretty decent size. GM was very good about this in the era. I don't really get any interesting or crazy features back here, but for a little coupe, this is a pretty decent size. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I love this blue. I think it's a fantastic color, and I always think of the Beretta in red, white, or black, so it's nice to see it in this nice shade of blue, and of course with those Z26 stickers on it and graphics as well. I think it really completes the sort of 90s package, which this is a drivable monument to the 1990s, I think, in some ways, which is just fantastic. Something else I love about the exterior is those saw blade wheels. That's what really drew this car to me. I love the exterior color, I love the graphics, but man, those saw blades are unlike anything else I've seen on a car, and I think they're some of the most attractive wheels to come out of the 90s. I'll go on record saying that. They're fantastic. But now let's get on to my final thoughts here on the 1996 Chevy Beretta Z26. Well, I want to talk about just that. The name Beretta. GM said that the name Beretta evokes a certain emotion of style and sophistication, but also brutality and macho. However, there was an issue. Beretta was already a firearm manufacturer in Italy, and they weren't a new one. In a few years here, they'll cross their 500 years of continuous operation. So when Chevy debuted the Beretta, that firearm company over in Italy was pissed. And so they did what any company does. They sued, and they sued GM big time. $250 million is what they wanted. However, once the two companies chatted, an agreement was made. GM would give Beretta $500,000 to their cancer research charity, as well as there was a symbolic trade of goods. Chevy sent one of these cars over to the Beretta firearm factory in Italy, and the Beretta firearm factory sent over 2 shotguns for the GM's execs. Now that Beretta is actually still on display in the Beretta Museum in Italy. So if you ever find yourself in Italy and at the Beretta Museum, that's why they have that car. But the shotguns that were given to GM have since gone missing. How American is that? You give us shotguns and we're like, I don't know what we did with them, to be honest. So I love that story about the Beretta and the Beretta name, but what do I think about this car driving the Beretta? Well, I think this is super, super cool. Don't get me wrong. This is a fantastic, unique, and interesting car from GM in the 1990s. I've been falling in love with this era of GMs, but I think this was a little bit of GM sort of cannibalizing themselves yet again. Like we saw with the Pontiac Solstice, GM has a tendency to sometimes make very similar cars to each other. If you want to talk about sweet GM cars. And so the reason I bring that up is that this is considered an L body GM. There's the N body, the F body, the J body, and those are all platforms that GM used for tons of different cars to make manufacturing easy. But this L body, they only used on this, the four-door version, which was called the Corsica, and the Pontiac Tempest, which was sold in Canada. They didn't really use it for all that much because they also had the N body for like the Oldsmobile Calais, and it was pretty much the same thing. So why did they need the L body? They had so many cars at this point that kind of served the same purpose. You could get this, or you could get a Cavalier Z24. What's the difference? Well, yeah, it had a 4-cylinder, but not much else than that. And so the Beretta only got one generation, lasting from 1987 until here in 1996, where it was discontinued when passenger airbags were required in 1997. GM didn't see a point in adding a passenger airbag, so they just kind of folded on the whole project. Again, sadly typical of GM. And so today I get to bask in the glory of a car that was rather short-lived. 9 model years isn't that long. And even at that, this car wasn't overly popular. Its original conception was the idea that this would replace the Camaro, much like the Ford Probe to the Mustang. I guess things didn't quite pan out the way GM thought that they would. But with that being said, I'm just happy to be driving one and reliving what GM was doing in the mid-1990s. I was so excited to film this car. It's just such a cool piece of not only GM history, but automotive history. And I was so excited to show that to you guys in HD. I love it, and I'm very, very thankful. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.